So hello and welcome. I'm Frederick Dunn and this is The Way to Be. Now this is different today. We're going to talk about spiders. Why should we be talking about spiders if we're beekeepers? Well, because as beekeepers you come across spiders, and maybe in the middle of winter, which is what's going on right here in the state of Pennsylvania, I collected a spider for my ceiling. So I needed to house it so I could make observations, make a video, share with you about the spider and its behavior, its diet, other details like that. So we're looking at a spider enclosure, and this is for a jumping spider, specifically the bold jumping spider, which is Phytopus audax. And you need to keep it so that it can't get out, so you can feed it along with staring at things. So this is something I got on Amazon. If you wanted to look and see where you can get one yourself, I'll put the link down in the video description. Everything you're seeing in this video I purchased, so except the spider, which showed up on its own. So this measures 3 inches by 3 inches by 6 inches high, and as you're going to see in this video, I'm going to show you what this spider has been doing for almost 2 weeks. So we're spanning quite a bit of time, and that's the reason why this video is going to take a while. But notice that it has an opening in the top, very important, and an opening on the side, because when your jumping spider gets into a space like that, they're going to go to the ceiling. And then they're going to spin their little web, but it's not the kind of web that other spiders have, which is where they use it to collect food and things like that. They kind of refer to these webs as a hammock. And you might wonder if you have a male or a female if you're looking at these things. And in my case, I have a female. There she is. She is in a clear plastic test tube, which is something that I just happened to have handy when I saw her crawling along the ceiling above my editing station. And I put her in there, and of course I put a fly in there with her, and didn't she jump right on it and get it. Now she looks kind of small to me, but after sending the image around and asking the experts, I have found out that she is probably around 8 months old. And you may be wondering, how long would she live overall? Well, the females live longer than the males, I'm told. And that could be up to 2 years in captivity, and they do really well. So I opened the front door here, which has a magnetic closure on it, put my test tube on the front, and waited to see if she would walk out and jump into my jumping spider enclosure. And I've put some sticks in there so she can climb on those, but they can also climb on very smooth surfaces without any problem at all. I didn't want to shake her in or tap her in or bother her. I just want to treat her the way I do honeybees, which is let them go into their space on their own. And the twigs that are in there are from my ficus trees. So that's it. It's very simple. Now, the reason I want beekeepers to pay attention to this is because, you know what, you're always going to encounter spiders. Out in our apiary, which is what we call a place where we keep our honeybee hives, we pull off the outer lids of our beehives, and almost every hive has a resident bold jumping spider. And so I want you to know a little bit about them, so that when you see them, you know what to expect. And of course she jumps and can't get out though, which is very key. The other thing is, I'm going to show you her progress through a couple of weeks here, and I'm going to feed her, of course. She's looking right at us. They have fantastic eyesight, and remember, these are ambush hunters. And I've spent many hours out in the bee yard watching bold jumping spiders, just like this one, coming down out of their hiding spot, which is under the cover, right onto the landing board of a beehive, and they nab honeybees. And then they usually take them off to some sheltered place underneath the landing board or something like that, and they eat the bee. Now, this is something that's fun to look at for me, and if you were ever going to like a spider, this is the species. They're fuzzy. Even their legs are fuzzy. They have big eyes. They're very alert and aware, as you can see here. Now, we've just put this one in the enclosure, and it's wandering everywhere. Now, a lot of this stimulation to wander around, and look at the little tail thread that she's leaving behind there. Everywhere they go, I've noticed that they're leaving a tiny strand of webbing. And did you know that that's almost like a bungee cord, a little safety thread, that if, for example, she fell off that overhead there, she would dangle from that. You can also grab onto that little thread and pick her up by it if you wanted to. So it was important to me, so that you can see what I see, that this enclosure be super clear, and this is the best one I could find. And just based on reviews, and of course I'm, I guess, giving it a review here too. It has tiny openings, as you can see, on the sides and the top, which means that even though you spritz it with water and try to keep things moist in there, and I'm going to discuss how I do that, it's not too moist, so it can still dry out. Spiders don't like breezes, so don't puff at them and breathe on them. Look at those two forward-looking eyes and how big they are. Of course, it's a spider. They have 8 of those. And if you're used to looking at honeybees, honeybees have 3 body parts. They have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. But this is a spider, 8 legs, and it only has the thorax and the abdomen. So they're very interesting, and I know that some people get bothered by the way they walk around. And they eat lots of different things: flies, crickets, roaches, other small insects. And because it's wintertime here, we can often find a fly just on the inside of the windows in this grow room. And so that's what I did. Now her activity is often dictated by how warm it is in the space that she's in. So there's a lot to learn there too. You may be wondering, if you put a fly in there with your spider, how come she's not eating it? Shouldn't she be going after the fly and getting it right away? Well, if it's too cold, or if it's the middle of the night, they tend not to. And so I want you to understand what too cold is. So in this space overall, it's about 64 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is actually pretty cold for a jumping spider. They're cold-blooded, just like honeybees. And they need warmth, and when it's warm, their activity picks up. And activity would be exploring, like this one is doing right here, or hunting and eating food. So if you've got a pet spider and it's not going after the fly, like this one that's been so lucky to be put in this enclosure with this little spider, they may ignore the fly. They may not move around. The fly may not move around enough to get the spider's attention, because I've made some observations while I've been keeping this spider, and if the fly sits still, the spider doesn't necessarily go after it. But if it moves a little bit, it's a movement that the spider recognizes with those large, keen eyes. And the spider will run over and jump on the fly, which is probably why they're called jumping spiders. Now I've noticed that this spider, and her name is Janice, does little jumps and hops, but I've not seen any dramatic long distance jumps. And remember that she's always going to leave a little thread behind, and there she goes. You should also understand that every jump does not mean a catch. So she's active though. So if we raise the temperature, 74 degrees, 75 degrees, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, all the better. She gets very active. It also increases her ability to jump and catch flies, which is what she did right there. Now what's happening? How do they eat? How does a spider eat a fly? Well, you'll be happy to know they have little fangs that they stick into the fly, and they inject their digestive fluids into the spider, or into the fly, or whatever they happen to be eating. I'm not sure if they eat other spiders or not. Maybe they actually could. They're kind of solitary, of course, and it will inject the digestive fluids and then suck them back out of the fly, and then you'll find the fly lifeless on the bottom. This might be stressful for you to watch because that little fly is kicking. This is what honeybees do too. When a jumping spider runs out on the landing board of a honeybee hive and they grab one of the workers and walk away with it, the worker is still kicking. And I noticed that they put their fangs into the thorax. And in the thorax, which this fly also has, that's where the muscles are that control flight, and the legs are attached there as well. So when they're injecting their venom, which is also their digestive fluid, into that tiny insect, it's also paralyzing it. So it can't get away. And you can see that this jumping spider is pretty small, and it's estimated that she's about 8 months old. And also, based on her markings, it's estimated that she's actually done her final molt. So she may not be getting a lot bigger than she is right now. You can also look at their abdomen, see how round it is, and notice whether or not they're well fed. So this one, being fed a fly, and remember, I fed her flies before the container showed up inside her test tube. So her abdomen filled right out. And I suppose if you fast forwarded through this, because during the time frame that it took to make all these video observations, she eats probably 5 flies, which also I've learned before you start jumping into the comment section. That's too much food for the spider. So what we're going to do is, of course, now that she's getting settled in this enclosure, and now that she's been well fed and we know that she's not starving, we will back off on the number of flies she gets. She won't get one every other day, and we'll start to feed her one about every 4th or 5th day. Because I also understand, apparently, that if you feed them too much, you can accelerate their life. In other words, shorten it. I don't know how all that works, but when spiders grow, they have to molt and shed their exoskeleton. And so I probably won't see that happen. One of the ways we know that they're preparing to molt, for example, if they make a little cottony hammock up in the top, and it's not just any cottony hammock, but one that's really dense to the point where you almost can't see the spider when they get into it. Well, she's been working on her little hammock area, but it is thin. We can see this spider everywhere she goes. Now, the other thing that happened is I was looking into spider enclosures for jumping spiders, and I noticed that they put a lot of plastic plants and substrate and a lot of ornamentation inside these boxes. Now, why didn't I do that? Well, this is based on my own observations of what they're doing outside. So, in the apiary, they are just on plain wood and under the lid, and what I'm showing you here is how I'm going to introduce moisture into that enclosure. So I have these wicks that are for watering plants. And I thought, you know what? If I can just put a wire around one of these wicks for watering, and then I use a syringe because I'm also a poultry technician, so I have syringes for collecting blood from poultry. I thought I would just put this wick inside the enclosure, run the wire through one of the tiny vent holes, and then all I have to do is stick the syringe through the hole. Now this would be for grown-ups, not for children, of course. And then I can introduce water into this little wick, and that would increase humidity, and the water would drip. I know that a lot of people spritz or mist their little containers so that the spider can come out, and they put their mouth right on the little droplets, and they drink. So water is very important. Humidity is very important. Now, this entire room has high humidity because it is a grow room. So here goes the syringe part, putting the water in there, and it doesn't take a lot, but you'll see eventually that the drips get soaked up into that wick, travels down the length of it, and the drip will develop on the bottom side. And so I let a few drips go on the bottom. You can also just take a syringe and spritz the opposite wall, but remember that ultimately it's going to get dirty and affect or impact your ability to see the spider clearly, and more important than that, for your spider to see you. You know, they turn their heads and they stare right at you. It's almost impossible to sneak up on a spider, especially one like this with the big eyes. When you see big eyes like this one has, you know these are roving, these are ambush hunters. They're not just sitting in a nest waiting for things to happen. They go out and they make things happen. Now, when they make their hammock, where do they put it? It's almost always in the very top, which makes sense. That's where I find them too. When we pull a cover off of a beehive, that little cottony web is right up there. And look at the coloration on the front. They almost have emotions, you could think. So it's very interesting. And the name of it just means daring. It's a bold jumping spider. So the habitat that they normally live in this part of Pennsylvania is pretty much, I think, anywhere they want to be, but they're always up on sticks, old sheds, buildings, dead trees, and things like that, and they come out in the sunlight. So that's the other thing I wanted to look at too. How much does this spider care about the amount of light that it's under, and would that make a difference? So I'm going to test that here too, and this was very informative for me because I put 3 lights on this, which you're going to see later in the video, and they were each set at different luminosity settings. So one was at low, one was medium, one was high. Where do you think Janice here went and parked herself? underneath the low light, intermediate light, or the bright light? You'll find out. So here, of course, we have another fly scooting around on the bottom. Now, I tried some other things too, because I did see that some people have problems getting their flies and then getting them into their enclosures. So later on in this video, we're going to take a fly, we're going to put it in the freezer, and we're going to let that fly pass out from the cold, and then we're going to drop that in there. But I learned some things about that are very fun to pass on, because spiders don't care too much for flies that are not behaving like flies. For example, those that have been cycled through your freezer. Now this little fly is a lot of fun, because what did it do? It was away from the spider. It was down at the bottom. What did it do? Turned around, scooted right back up to the top to make sure that it had an opportunity to become a spider. Flies don't live that long anyway. With this spider having the potential to live 2 years, we're going to take care of it. But here's the thing. Because it's freezing outside and it's going to remain below freezing for a long time, you couldn't just take this spider and collect it off your wall and throw it outside. It would die. But we could keep it now for observation. I don't know, make a YouTube video about it, observe its eating patterns, and get some information about how it likes or dislikes light, and what it likes to eat, when it likes to eat it. And then in the springtime, when it's nice and warm, we can turn it loose outside again. And some of you may be horrified. Knowing that it might eat your honeybees, would you put this thing out on a beehive? Well, I would turn it loose outside, not necessarily assign it to a beehive, because, for example, the beehives are likely to already have their resident spider. And now you can really see the fangs clearly. I thought that was really interesting, because look at all the grooming that it's doing. Now, I know it's those fangs probably that freak people out more than anything else, and they are like syringes. Remember, their digestive fluids go through them. What happens if it bit you? Well, I had a hard time finding anyone who's been bitten by one. I've stuck my fingers in the cage with it. I've collected dead flies. It is not aggressive. So, for example, if you're looking for a little spider that is going to be friendly, that's not going to jump on you and bite you first chance it gets, and one that will pay attention and be active and roam around and entertain you, I think the jumping spider's right at the top of the list. So I'm not an arachnologist. I don't know everything about spiders. But I think it's helpful if you're a beekeeper or if you're outside in nature for you to understand some of their behaviors and some of what drives those behaviors. Also, what's going on when it's brightly lit outside. That's why we see them on the sunny sides of buildings. Unless they've collected a prey item, then they scoot around and hide while they're doing that. You know something else that they do? When they hear a mud dauber wasp coming in, the vibration, the frequency of a mud dauber wasp scares the jumping spider into hiding. That's because mud dauber wasps eat spiders, and the jumping spider's not about to become a wasp, or to feed its babies more accurately. So we just keep feeding it flies here. And we have the wick. What else are we going to talk about? I will show you what happens to a fly when you chill it in your fridge. I've got some ideas about that too. But I highly recommend that if you find a fly inside your house in the wintertime, that you get a good enclosure for it. In fact, I would go as far as to say, go ahead and get the enclosure ahead of time. If you've got children at home, they get their cues off of you regarding what's to be feared and what's to be killed and what's to be thrown out and things like that. Now here's my lighting test. These 3 lights are identical, and the one on the left was low, the one in the middle was medium, and the one to the back was set on high. And of course, Janice went right under the highest setting. Now I also did thermal scans on that, and that was at 89 degrees Fahrenheit, also underneath the bright light. Now one of the tests that I did not do was turning all the lights off, for example, and just having a warm spot. So I didn't do that. I don't know that for sure. But I do know that the bright lights draw the jumping spider in. And the jumping spider, of course, sees better, just as we do, in bright light. And then when you put a food item out there, so if you've got a spider in a dark enclosure, that is not very inspiring to that spider. It's not a motivating environment for them to go on the hunt. So there are 2 things that I've learned here to get them to hunt. One is they need bright enough light to see the prey item. The second part is that prey item needs to move and act like a prey item. It needs to be warm enough for them to digest their food. Now here's a fly that I caught. I'm putting it in the freezer. I'm going to leave it there for 4 minutes because this is for the people that can't stand to touch a fly. I don't know why people are like that, but let's say you were one of those. Now you can just open up the lid and drop it in. The fly looks dead. Now this used to be something that people did, parlor tricks. They would say, look, I've got a dead fly, and they'd put it in their hand, and then they'd say, I'm going to resuscitate it, I'm going to breathe life into it, and they would put their breath on it, which did what? Warmed up a chilled fly, and what would it do? It would be resurrected. And then the people would think, wow, that was a cool magic trick. You took a dead fly and you brought it back to life. Or it spent about 4 minutes in the freezer. Now this fly, this is frustrating. What did it do? It scooted around just enough to stick its head right in the only collection of water in the entire enclosure. Now you might be thinking, look at that head, it's in the water, it's drowning. Well, it isn't. They have spiracles. It's an insect. They can actually put their whole head underwater and not drown because they respirate through the sides of their thorax and their abdomen. So it's not in jeopardy, but if you're a spider, does that look tasty? No. And what I learned is leaving that little fly to scoot around after being through a freeze cycle and then getting itself all wet. The spider didn't care much about it. Now the space, see that? About 64, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, not warm enough. So I put the cage on top of my creeping thyme, which is just germinated, and that's at 73 degrees. Now once I did that, the additional illumination, the humidity, and the warmth, spider goes on the hunt. But I didn't want to wait around for it to go after the frozen fly, so I tossed in another one. And look, a jump and a miss. Now this is something you need to be warned about. You might be spending a lot of time sitting wherever your spider is and just watching it do its thing. And the spider, of course, is in its enclosure watching you do your thing. Do you know they can focus on the moon with those big eyes? I don't know what practical application that has. And in a recent study I saw, they also dream. I find that very interesting too, and I suggest that you even look it up. You should question everything. But they go through REM sleep, rapid eye movement. They could do that because when they're younger and they're going through their molts, there's an area there where they are semi-translucent, and they can actually see the eyes. That is very interesting stuff. So there are lots of grabs. But you know what, this flies are just amazing, because every time that fly ran away or escaped the spider and dropped to the bottom of the enclosure, it scooted right back up there to make sure the spider had another chance. I think that is very thoughtful on the part of the fly. Now, this activity, remember, your spider, when it's warmer, kicks right in and scoots right around. It also improves its jumping and athletic ability when it has a warmer environment. So you might be wondering, what's the optimum warmth for the spider? Remember, right now we're in the low to mid 70s, but if it were closer to 80, you get improved jumping and more roaming and looking around, more activity. So number one, moisture, water every single day. By the way, food like this fly about once every 5 or 6 days now that it's well fed. Your indicator regarding whether or not your spider's been well fed is the shape and plumpness of that abdomen right there. Now another thing you should be aware of, if you've collected a spider that may have already mated, for example. See, it caught the fly there. We knew that would happen. Now the webbing, the little hammock that they make up in the top, the more dense that is, it's one of two things, so I'm told. Either it's going to molt in there because it's growing and developing, and we think this one is past its final molt. So if it creates a really dense web, a hammock that it hides inside of, it could be about to lay an egg pouch and produce young. So I see no indication that that's what this one is going to do. So I think I lucked out. I think I have a female with personality, so I can name her Janice. And she's eating well. She's responding to the humidity that we set her in. We know now the temperature parameters. We know that she likes flies, and we're always going to get one of those in the grow room. and that she's going to live the rest of winter this way, and she's healthy. So I don't know what else there is really to know. So now we just look around and appreciate the design of this arachnid. It's easy to see. Look how she seems to look around. They tilt their head up and down. They look straight at you. They have brilliant coloration, and the lights, of course, show that. If you give them a hiding space, but I found out that if you create a shaded area inside this little enclosure, that she moves out into the sun, into the bright light. I suppose you could hit a level where it's actually too bright, but this works out really well for me. Now another thing, based on the reading that I did, you want to cool it down at night. So we do drop this room to about 65 degrees. I think that replicates kind of what would be going on outside. And so you might want to do that too. It needs a period or a cycle of darkness and cooling down. So if you like this video, hopefully you didn't unsubscribe. A lot of beekeepers don't like spiders, don't want to look at spiders, don't want to hear about spiders, and the minute you bring it up, they're unsubscribing or they're jumping up at a presentation and staring at a wall. I hope that you will give spiders a second chance. Consider a jumping spider. They're everywhere. Get one, take care of it, learn more, and let them live in your apiary. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this has been The Way to Be.